Photosynthesis, it is basically the food making process in plants. Students, it is very essential to understand the process of photosynthesis, because as you will see in later in this session, the photosynthesis forms the basis of life on earth, right? So before we move on, let's just understand that what are the parts of plants that are involved in photosynthesis. So basically we have seen that we already know that there are four important parts of the plant, that is your flower, leaf, root and stem, right? And out of these four, leaf is considered as the kitchen or the food factories in plant, right? So these are called as the food factories in plant. The reason being that these are the parts of the plants where photosynthesis occurs. Right? So now let's move on and understand what exactly is photosynthesis and how does it take place. So students, whenever we are cooking something, like if you think about how your mom is cooking food, so what she needs is some ingredients, right? So when we were studying nutrition in your previous class, you saw that how there was a need of different kinds of nutrition in the process of cooking a food, right? Similarly, the plants also need certain raw materials for cooking the food. What are those raw materials? Those raw materials are carbon dioxide, sunlight, right? Then water, right? Apart from that, it needs a special pigment called as the chlorophyll. About all of these we will study in detail. So the plant actually needs all these raw materials for the photosynthesis, and they need to be supplied to the leaf for the photosynthesis to occur, right? So all of these CO2, sunlight, water and chlorophyll is something which is already present in the leaf, and all these three things are needed by the plants from the outside environment, right? So if we talk about water, which is absorbed by the roots, is transported to the leaf. So as you can see, water is present in the soil, and you must have seen that any plant that you have in your garden or at your house, you must have seen your mother regularly watering it. So what happens in that case is that the water in the soil is in abundance, and the root absorbs the water, and the water is sent to the leaf, right? So it goes up and it is sent to the leaf. Apart from that, the carbon dioxide goes in from the air. So you can see that the CO2 goes in from the air, the water goes in from the soil, right? So when the water is going in from the soil, the part that plays a very important role in the absorption is the root. You've already studied in your previous class that a root is very, very important part, because it absorbs the minerals, nutrients and water from the soil, right? So all of these materials that are being absorbed by the root are transported to the leaves, right? And carbon dioxide is taken up from the air. Right, students? So these are the raw materials that are needed by the leaves for the synthesis of food, right? Now, let's move on and understand about all these different components and from where do we get it. So conditions that are necessary for photosynthesis to occur: first, chlorophyll, that is presence of the chlorophyll; second, sunlight; third is the carbon dioxide, and fourth is the water. So all of these are the conditions that are required by the leaf for the photosynthesis to occur. Now let's understand one by one that how these raw materials are obtained by the plant. First of all, let's talk about carbon dioxide. Plants usually take the carbon dioxide that is present in the atmosphere. We already know that in air there are different types of gases, which includes carbon dioxide, oxygen and nitrogen, right? And all of these three gases are important for the environment, right? We will study about all of this later, but first of all, let's talk about CO2, which is taken up by the plant from the atmosphere. Now, you must be thinking that when you look at the surface of the leaf, it looks something like this, right? So, you must be wondering how does the CO2 goes into the leaf. So, when we look at the leaf surface, it's usually flat like this, and you are not able to observe anything, right? It's plain, and it's very difficult to understand from where does the CO2 actually goes in. So when you magnify the leaf and when you observe it properly, you will find that the carbon dioxide goes in to the leaf through stomata, right? So stomata basically, student, is a small opening, right? This is a small opening which is guarded by the guard cells, right? So this is the small opening that is called as the stomatal opening, and these two cells right over here are called as the guard cells. So this is the stomatal opening and these two cells are called as the guard cells, right? So what exactly happens is that whenever the leaf requires the carbon dioxide, right? So this is the opened stomatal opening, and what happens in this case is the carbon dioxide goes inside, right? So this is the opening or the pore, right? And this is the guard cell, right? So with the help of this particular structure, the CO2 goes in, and whenever the plant doesn't need CO2 or any exchange of gas doesn't take place, the guard cell closes, right? So what it looks is something like this, right? So over here the stomata is closed, right? So at one place when the stomata is needed for the opening, right, for opening the pore, the guard cells open up and they take in carbon dioxide from the environment, and when it is not needed, the stomatal opening closes, right? So with the help of stomata that is present on the lower part of the leaves, right, it is present on the lower part of the leaves, the carbon dioxide goes in, right? And through this process, this stomata only, the oxygen comes out. From where does this oxygen come? We will study in a later in this session. For now, it's important to remember that carbon dioxide goes into the leaf through a pore called as the stomata, which is guarded by the guard cells. This term which I have been using, that is the guard cells, over here we have this one particular term called as the cell. So what exactly do we know about a cell? Let's just take a brief moment and understand what exactly is cell and what is its importance. Students, whenever you must have seen around you different constructions happening, buildings are being constructed day in and day out. You must have seen that there is a small entity called as the brick, right? And this brick is used to build a huge building, right? So many bricks together, right, they come together. So many bricks come together and then a huge building is formed, right? Cell is also a little bit similar to this particular theory. So with the help of brick, the whole building is formed. So similarly, organisms, the living organisms that we are seeing around us, that is the plants, our body, as well as the animals that we are looking at, cells are the basic structure, right? So cells, like suppose this is a cell, these cells come together to form, the whole organism. So when we talk about cell, these are the tiny units, these are the small units from which the living beings are made up of. Cells are so small that they can only be seen with the help of a microscope, right? Let's understand the different structure that are associated with the cell. So first of all, the cell is enclosed by an outer layer called as the membrane, right? So this is known as the cell membrane. It is the outer covering of the cell. What is it? It is the outer covering of cell, right? Then we have another part of the cell that is known as the cytoplasm. This is the jelly-like substance. It is the jelly-like substance which is contained inside this cell membrane, right? Then you have another very important part, that is the nucleus. It is the centrally located part of the cell. It is centrally located. It is one of the very important parts, right? And it has a spherical structure, as you can see in this diagram, and it is surrounded by the cytoplasm. So these are the three important parts of the cell. Usually we've seen that the organisms that we see around are made up of number of cells. Numerous cells are involved in forming a living organism that we see around ourselves, but there are organisms which are single celled also, right? Those are also the living organisms. So in this way, I hope you were able to understand what is a cell, and whenever I'm going to use this term, whether in this session or in the next sessions, I hope you will remember this term and understand it properly, right? Now, coming back to the topic, we've discussed that carbon dioxide goes into the body of the plant, that is the leaf, through the stomatal pore, right? Stomata is a pore which is guarded by the guard cells, right? Now, let's move on and answer a question that Bujo has. Bujo wants to know how water and minerals are absorbed by the roots reach the leaves. Meaning that he wants to know whether, when we talk about a plant, right? So we know that there are basically parts which are above the soil, right? So this is a leaf which is above the soil, and then you have the part which is below the soil, right? And this is the root, right? And we know root is the one which absorbs water, right? Root is the one which absorbs water. Now, what he wants to know is that water which is absorbed by the part that is below the soil, how does it reach the leaf? How does the water actually covers this distance? What is the system in the body of the plant which helps it in movement of water from roots to the leaves? So let's answer his question and understand this mechanism. Basically, the water and minerals which are absorbed in the soils are transported to the leaves by the help of the vessels. Students, vessels are pipe-like structures. These are the pipe-like structures which run in the body of the plant, right? So suppose this is the body of the plant and this is the root, right? This is your root which has absorbed the water, right? So this is the root. What happens is there is a vessel-like structure. You will study about this in detail in the coming chapters, and the water that is taken up, right? So the water that is taken up by the roots go up to the leaf, right? Goes up to the leaf with the help of this particular vessel, right? So to understand it a little better, so this is pipe-like structure, right, which allows the movement of water upwards from the root towards the leaf, right? And in this way, the water moves up, right? So what are the vessels? These are the pipe-like structures which allow the movement of water from the root to the leaf. These form a continuous structure, right? So these vessels are arranged in such a form, like I said already, that these are vessels. So these cells are actually arranged in such a form that they form a continuous structure which allows the movement of water easily towards the leaf, right? In this way, right? So these are very important structures in the plant, and it allows the movement of water from root to the leaf, right? And about this we are going to study in detail in your coming chapters in this particular class, where you will talk about the transportation in plants, and you will see that what is the name of this particular system and how does it conduct water from the root towards the leaf. For now, it's important for you to understand that these structures form a continuous pipe-like structure, and they help in the transportation of water from the root to the leaves, and they are called as the vessels, right? Now, once we've understood that how carbon dioxide goes into the leaf and how water reaches the leaf, next let's understand the question, let's just discuss the question that Paheli has. Paheli wants to know what is so special about the leaves that they can synthesize food but other parts of the plant cannot. So it's a very valid question. You must have seen. This is the question that you must have asked yourself also, that in a plant we have 4 basic parts. We have leaf, we have stem, we have root. But why is only the leaf that is considered as the food factory of the plants? Why is it? What is so special in the leaf? So if you remember, we had talked about 4 conditions that are required for photosynthesis, out of which we have discussed 2. The third one, students, is chlorophyll. So this is the speciality of the leaf, specifically green leaves. So green color pigment, which is present in the leaf and it provides the color that is green, is called as the chlorophyll, right? This pigment is really important because it helps in capturing the energy of the sunlight. If you remember, we had said that sunlight was one of the important raw materials that are required by the leaf to perform photosynthesis. So what is chlorophyll? Chlorophyll is a green pigment which helps in capturing the sunlight, and the energy of this sunlight helps the leaf to further convert all the raw materials into the food. Right, students? So this sunlight provides energy for the formation of food. And this formation occurs by carbon dioxide and water, right? So the process of photosynthesis is the formation of food in the presence of sunlight, right? So this is how the synthesis of the food takes place, and that is why chlorophyll plays a very, very important role.